So, all right. So, Rich, should we
Ready to-
officially open the
Yep.
meeting, and you're thinking you want to flip the order of the agenda? Or I don't care.
We can stick to the order if you want.
Okay.
It's fine.
Well,
right.
Gary didn't join the call for the master RFP interviews either, though.
That's
No.
true. Yep. So
yeah, it shouldn't matter.
Yep. Okay. Good point. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone. Tonight is Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. This is the planning board meeting. It is held virtually via Zoom, in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 20, relating to the 2020 Norfolk coronavirus outbreak emergency. The November 1st, 2022, 7 p.m. public meeting of the Norfolk Planning Board shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternate public access to the meeting was provided via Zoom, and it is posted on the town's website on how to access it. Since this meeting will be recorded for future broadcast by Norfolk Community Television, and since we are remote, all votes will be roll call votes. So let's go ahead and get started with the meeting. We have a brief agenda. Just a couple items, and the first item is the master plan, to discuss the interviews from the master plan, which was that a week ago or was it 2 weeks ago? Anyway, it doesn't matter, but previously, 1 or 2 weeks ago.
Yes,
So Rich, why don't you get us started with that?
Sure. So
We have to do attendance.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's do attendance. Good point. So we have our members. We have signified by saying here, John Weddleton.
Yeah.
Chris Montfort.
Here.
Eric Diamond.
Here.
Our associate Melissa Mayo.
Here.
Gary Sullivan is absent. And myself is Chad Peck. I'm here. And then we have our town planner.
Here.
Excellent.
So just a intro recap for the public, and I know the planning board already knows this. The board held interviews for the master plan for the town of Norfolk on October 17th. There was 2 submitted proposals, one from Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and the second one was from Beta Group. There was a meeting held at Town Hall. The consultants each came in, made their presentation. The presentation was recorded and it was up for viewing on Norfolk Community TV for those folks that wanted to take a look at it. After the interviews were completed, each member completed a scoring matrix in terms of the RFP proposal, which was there was minimum evaluative criteria, and then second, there was another section of criteria which was more qualitative in terms of across the board, which was let me get the categories here. Just between highly advantageous, which they would receive a score of 10. Across to advantageous was a score of 7. To not advantageous, which would have been a score of 3, and then unacceptable is obviously a 0 score. Each of the members submitted their proposals, their evaluation form, and it was, I think, in terms of the results reflected in both were very good proposals before the town from both companies. But in terms of evaluation, side by side from a qualification, MAPC had the higher score of the 2 that were submitted between Beta Group and MAPC from the board. And so with that being the case, the next step, which fortunately I informed the chair earlier before we got on TV live, is the price proposal is sitting in 1 Liberty Lane, and I am not sitting in 1 Liberty Lane. I'm sitting in 1 Valley View Terrace, without price proposals for the board to, for me to open for the board to review. Now, this is a RFP based on qualifications. Price comes into play in terms of, because it's an RFP with qualifications. In the event the top firm selected was a higher price, the board still could, within the budgetary parameters, choose them over the second choice. So my suggestion would be to the board is that, fortunately for me, I'm gracious enough to know we got a meeting on Monday. So I'm going to have to add that on to the meeting on Monday. But between now and Monday, one thing that wasn't done, which if the board wanted to do, is reach out to some of the references. As some of the public may know or may not know, MAPC has done multiple studies for the town of Norfolk, so there is familiarity with their work in town, in terms of the B1 study, the townwide economic development study, and some other studies in the past. They're currently doing the Southwood Hospital site study for the town. In terms of Beta Group, they have, well, they haven't worked on planning study per se. They have worked on broader planning studies. They did the feasibility study for the Metacomet Greenway. They recently completed the accessibility and sidewalk inventory for the town that was partly funded by the planning board. They did the municipal vulnerability plan study for the town. I'm trying to think what else they did. Might be escaping me. And they do actually, they do perform peer review services for the town between the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. And some, in fact, some of the people on the team that was before you actually are some of the same people doing the work before the town. So I think there's a, there's a fair appreciation of, since both of them are fairly known by the board, I'm not necessarily think a reference check is needed per se. But if you wanted to, we certainly could do something in that if they felt that being compelling. But I think in these cases, it's probably not as critical compared to somebody else that was completely unfamiliar to the town.
I don't think we need to do a reference check unless anybody else feels we need to.
Okay.
So Beta, though, had the partner company that the RFP was with. Do we have experience with them in particular, or just Beta? Because I think they would be a fair amount of the master planning process versus Beta, from what I heard.
Yeah. So they had a much smaller role in the feasibility study for the Metacomet Greenway. So they just did a really a small piece of it in terms of a zoning analysis, but in terms of them directly, I can't think of nothing really too recent that I'm aware of that they've done within the town of Norfolk.
I mean, MAPC, I wouldn't think we would need to do a reference check because I'm sure that was done last time, and we've just done a pretty major project with them for something similar. But I would say probably for Beta and their partner. Beta we're familiar with, but they're more environmental, and I think we're going to be working a lot with their partner. So I would say probably reference check for them. And if we do it for them, do we also do it for Beta? I don't know the rules on that, but I would say we would probably want to check for the Beta, and their name is escaping me right now, but their partner that they submitted the RFP with.
It's Barrett Associates, Judy Barrett Associates. Yeah. We could certainly, if the rest of the board agrees, we can definitely make that happen and do that. Just check on both of them. I don't have a problem.
That's fine.
I think it makes sense. Yeah. So what I would say then, So between now and Monday, I can check the references in terms of for both of them and report back to the board on Monday. And we could just table the full discussion as to Monday, which
Yep.
maybe would make sense.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. If we're gonna check references, absolutely.
So we can, if there's no other discussions, I guess I'd say we could shorten up that discussion on the master plan. We'll, I'll Betsy add it to our agenda for Monday night. And then there are a couple things, not jumping too far ahead, but there are a couple things that maybe you might want to shift around for that agenda. So that way it gives time for this and some other things. I'll talk to you about that later on, but. So if you won't, I think that probably covers it for tonight on the master plan, which maybe wasn't so terrible. I forgot those price proposals, I guess.
Nope. That's fine. No, that's fine. Let's make sure we get all our ducks in a row and do the right thing. So I don't think it's gonna hurt delaying this a week.
No, it won't hurt.
Yep.
Delay a week. And that's why we have these meetings and we have these discussions. So
That's right.
thank you for the thoughts on that. So I would turn to switch gears in terms of discussion relative to the C4 zoning changes.
Yep.
I sent in terms of between the last planning board meeting, which you made the recommendations to bring forward to town meeting. There was, if you hadn't watched the advisory committee, they voted twice on this topic. Once they voted not to recommend, and then second, they voted to IP. And then in between that, their vote and this meeting tonight, Mr. DePlacido had a meeting this past Saturday with members from the River's Edge Association to talk about the proposal in terms of what he was consideration in terms of the mixed use, but also part of the proposal, which I forwarded to the board. I can share it on the screen if you want. At least that diagram to show what was discussed. So let me just get that.
Yeah, I think
to help.
that would be great.
All right. Let me just open that up.
And while you're opening that up, Rich, Mr. DePlacido was not able to make it this evening, but he did sent Rich an email, which Rich has forwarded to all of us. And we do have some residents on Zoom as well. And we did receive an email from a resident as well. So we do have some, feedback from Mr. DePlacido and also some residents that we can discuss.
So can you see the
Yes. Yep.
screen? Okay. All right. So in terms of what you see here, this is a diagram of what was discussed at that meeting, which is along up at Rockwood Road in the intersection where it bears off to the left. In terms of Holbrook Street, this yellow box is what was discussed in terms of the location of a mixed-use building, which was a combination of apartments, 55 and over apartments, because it is an age-restricted district in terms of residency there.
Mhm.
And then in consideration for the commercial was looking to have a smaller restaurant on the first floor. That would be the goal with this proposal, which would be somewhere in the 40 to 50. I'm trying to think what he said in his email, but not on the scale that originally was approved for a restaurant. A restaurant, which was part of the original proposal and the development what was part of the original approval is a much larger restaurant, which is really a much harder thing these days in terms of putting a restaurant from a ground up, full build restaurant. So this is similar to 40 to 60 seats. So probably Well, I know Cafe Cece's in the area, probably. I'm trying to think what's smaller, but I think, I'm trying to think of some restaurants in the area that might be comparable.
Like the Gavel maybe and rent them.
Yeah, and the Gavel might even be a little smaller than that too, but yeah, something on that
Or like
order.
Nevados.
Nevados, yep.
Nevados might be, yeah.
I think
Now, Rick-
Nevados now without the function space in it, yeah, that would be
right.
would be a good comp.
So Rich, am I also safe in assuming that it's like if the town votes to approve this, they still Mr. DePlacido will still have to come to the planning board for a plan modification.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yes,
Correct.
absolutely. So good.
I just want everyone to be aware of that you know, just because you know, we're proposing this zoning change, and if the town approves it, it doesn't mean that he can go build this. He's still got to come before the board, and we got to do a major modification to the plans.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. So that is exactly the case. So it's really, you know, think of the zoning in terms of here's an opportunity to do something, and there's a whole bunch all across town, and in terms of different districts, but the next level is the permitting level, which you speak to would be going before the planning board for the permit. And if you see in the bottom of the screen, the two yellow boxes there, those would be new condominium similar to what's there now in River's Edge, 55 and over units.
No,
So
Rich, he could build those with the current zoning. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep, that's permissible within the current zoning.
Okay.
You can even put them out where the mixed-use building is, and I think one of the things which I think is important for just overall for the record is which, you know, probably I want to read some. I just want to read something right from the book. So the C4 district, the purpose of this district, the master plan of the town of Norfolk has identified the goal of promoting development with the B1, C1, and C4. This is a C4, which will enhance the fiscal stability of the town and provide additional opportunities for employment and services as further described in parts A and B of the master plan. In order to implement these goals, the town establishes this section for the C4 mixed-use district. So this district does come from a master plan, albeit, you know, it's a little bit aged, 2007. But we're going to be entertaining a new, you know, we'll be working on a new master plan. So this zoning does come from a master plan from the town, which was the prior one, which was 2007. And in fact, which is interesting, it really doesn't even speak to residential in this purpose section, but we know the residential is there. It speaks to more of the commercial aspect of it. But anyway, so I think that's a fair point. So really the reason why you're here tonight in part to discuss this is, as I mentioned earlier, the advisory committee recommended and they voted to IP the article. So now in order to put it on town meeting floor, the planning board would need to submit a substitute motion to have it go before town meeting to vote on it. So that's really what you're principally here to discuss tonight, to see if the board would entertain that and do that. If that were the case, then we would let town administrator Justin Casanova Davis know, Jay Monahan. No, not Jay Monahan. Wrong guy. Sorry.
Hollerman.
Different person. Jay Tallerman. Wrong Jay. My apologies to Jay Tallerman. There is another Jay Monahan, but that's not him. But anyway, and then the advisory committee chair let them know, just so they know that this would be forthcoming. And Jay, last week at the moderators meeting, suggested that that the board does let them know. That way, there's one motion before town meeting, which would be the substitute motion, and then the vote would be on the article itself. Which these are combined into one article, which is Article 12.
Correct. So there was a few reasons why the advisory IP'd it. Unfortunately, David Lutz isn't on. I was going to let him speak to that, but I just took notes, and a couple of them were they were not overly comfortable with the language. They felt it wasn't strict enough, and they wanted specifics with regards to that you couldn't finish the residential. So in the mixed use building, you could not finish more than 75% of the residential if you didn't have 100% of the commercial completed.
Which is against the law, because we had that check 8 years ago after the Chipman building, and you cannot do it.
Right.
Yep.
So, and yeah, and their big comment at the meeting was exactly that building you're talking about, the Chipman building right there by the post office. So
None of them were around when that was even going on.
yeah, and the language that's in there, I still feel, and you know, I'll let you guys make your own judgment on the board, but I still feel that language is appropriate. The language we have in there, and it's been vetted by our town council, so they're comfortable with it as well. That was one of them. The other was just they were concerned that the residents weren't notified adequately. That has been satisfied. It was, you know, it's my understanding there was an HOA meeting last week. That, you know, it's like an annual standing meeting, was my understanding. I could be wrong on that, but it was an HOA meeting, and and it was a well-attended meeting. So that you can check that box off as well. And I think that's really about it. Those were the two big ones so I think we're at a point now where we can put this as a planning board, we can put this back on the floor. But maybe we should hear from Rich. Do you want to put up Mr. Placido's email, or did everybody read it, or? And then
I could screen share going.
Yeah, why don't you just screen share it? Just so, again, it gets into the public record.
Can you see it on the screen?
Yep. Can you make? Yeah, it's fine. Basically, he said he's not able to make it. Asked the board to continue to support it at the November meeting. Had an opportunity to meet with the Village of River's Edge. Approximately 70 residents attended. That's a great attendance in my book. At this meeting, presented the development, lots of questions, all good questions, but you know, it looks like very well supported for the mixed use building with a restaurant and commercial use on the first floor. And then again, he just says, I recommend we move forward at the November town meeting. So any questions on that before we go on to look? I know we do have one. Look, I think we have one resident on the line here.
I do have one question. I think when Tom came to the meeting a couple of months ago, we were thinking that the development that he was going to do would satisfy some of our affordable housing, but I believe the 5 to 6 is actually under the threshold of what, 9 or somewhere between 9 and 12.
That's a good point. What is our is our minimum?
Well,
6?
It's 6.
Yeah.
It's
The
6.
minimum is 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
So between the condominiums that you saw on the plan, he doesn't, I mean, you just have a box. We don't know how many rental units it would be in there. So whatever that number is, well, at least we know there's 6 in terms of the condominiums potentially there. So you meet the base, and then whatever's in the, you know, you have to add into what's in the apartment. So that'll give you an aggregate amount of dwelling units. So we don't know yet, but
Right.
it
Each
will.
building can have no more than 6. If it's a
Right,
if
but
it's-
but this will be one project. So in terms
Right.
of dwelling units, you'll be counting both.
right. So you're really, as shown on that plan, there's like 3 buildings. So if each had a maximum of 6, you'd have 18 units. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
Right, which would be 15% under the bylaw,
Okay.
because it ramps up to 15 after 12 units.
Okay.
I think just one brief comment I would say, I know there was a lot of discussion about, you know, commercial space and vacant and so forth. I will say, in terms of, there are other vacant commercial spaces within the town, and there are spaces that are vacant that landlords and potential lessees don't come to terms on. So for example, I know some space people want to go in it, but the landlord and the lessee can't come to terms on who's going to pay for the fit up. So there are economics. So not to just point at one particular project, one particular, it's commercial. It's a dynamic process, right? So there are multiple reasons why property sometimes is vacant. So just the thought of somebody's going to put up a building and leave it vacant. There's existing buildings that have been vacant for years that have been put up. So I think it's kind of a fool's errand to get caught up in the whole thing about commercial space, and it's an economic. Most people economically build space to rent it, to make money on it. But we don't get.
Even if
That's right.
not, there are so many legal ways around having a related party lease with no money and canceled in a week. It's just beyond comparison. It's such a waste of time, such a waste of time. This portion to me of our meeting is a waste of time. That's why when you look at the bylaw, the advisory board is a finance board. I'm sorry, we've been calling it wrong. It's the advisory committee.
It's a committee.
They're not a board by the people. They're appointed by one person. And the reason the bylaw states only fiscal matters, the planning board on zoning may, if they choose to, go before the board. It seems like it's not a relative process when we take 3 months and they shoot from the hip from 1 hour looking at it blind to try to make a decision that we rule by. This should go right to the people. And anybody is that being residents also, let them say what they want, because a lot of the stuff was nonsense. And I start to lose all my respect when you have the chairman ranting on that board, saying that she used her position as the chairman of the advisory committee to get things done because she's become a developer, broker all of a sudden. That to me would have made me walk out if I was you guys, because that is, in my opinion, against math ethics, should not be tolerated, and we shouldn't have been a part of that meeting. So I find this discussion interesting, but really not valuable.
Unless the board votes to bring it, hopefully to town meeting, right? At least.
Exactly. We've done this
Right.
plenty of times before. They are not a bylaw committee.
Right. Any other questions from the board before we open it up to the residents? Oh. Okay.
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
The discussion before about the conditioning of the commercial space, is that even in the special permit that's not allowed, or it's in the zoning that's not allowed?
In the zoning does not allow a mixed use building in the C4 district.
No, but does the zoning, you said that you can't write in the prescriptive, build so many.
That the percentages like that.
Yeah.
John would know best on that.
I guess I'm trying to find out if that's still allowed in the special permit process or not.
I suppose it's something you could.
Allowed to do a mixed use in this district?
No, he means
No.
by saying that you can't sell or you can't do anything with the apartments until the retail space is complete.
It's against the law.
Right. It's kind of a discriminatory process
Sure.
because a lot of builders end up
You
using the
can't do that.
funding from the apartments to fit out the remainder of the effort.
Right.
I think we talked about this fairly in depth. I think a good thing if the board, if individually wanted to have a chat with the building commissioner because I have spoken to him, there is a lot that needs to be done. So in terms of meeting the code, in terms of a building, which is mixed between residential and commercial. So the notion that these spaces are void of any finishings is not the case. So,
The commercial will have an occupancy permit.
yeah,
Right.
so,
That's all that matters. It'll have an occupancy permit, and you have to build that to get to the utilities for the upstairs. So that's all that matters. Where they decide to put in there, where they put partition walls, what they change as far as infrastructure is not our job. And no one can make them do that.
Right.
One
That
other
answer-
question or comment is, how did you get such a great attendance at a meeting on a Saturday when we got 0 attendees for public hearing about this issue? It seems like we were a little backwards. We should have had this meeting
Well-
first, and then comments come to us after their meeting.
well, they had, this was part of their larger meeting though.
Right. This was an HOA. Eric, they might have had some contentious issue on their HOA meeting. We don't know. I mean, maybe.
Right, but we needed to have done that advertisement or get that participation up.
Yeah.
Zero is a failure, and
Right.
we need that participation and input.
So what you're saying is we need to hire Tom to help publicize this for us.
No,
To help us
how it
out, find out what he
works is-
did to be successful.
No, how it works is we have a posted special hearing on new zoning articles. If neighbors at River's Edge had an issue with this, it's their job to come to our meeting and to give us their thoughts. We don't have to go solicit neighbors for what their thoughts are.
Yeah, we did what is required of us in terms of the statute, and that's been done. Now, I mean, in this case,
Well, the plan here is dated the 24th. We hadn't seen this plan.
no, well,
Correct.
that plan was done for the meeting, for the HOA meeting.
Right. Yeah,
Not for
I'll be
your-
honest, that slide, the plan with the slide with the plan, that would have been very helpful to have this a few months ago when we first started talking about it, but we didn't, and we do have it now. So if we decide to bring this back on the floor for town meeting, that we would use that slide. I think that's extremely helpful as a handout.
It is helpful. The only cautionary thing is that's not the general practice when you talk about zoning changes like that, right?
Yes,
It's
So-
also not an approved site plan at this point
It's
in
not,
time.
yeah,
it's
that's true.
conjecture into the future of what might possibly be. We don't want to show that as, showing that we're intending to support this particular plan because we haven't reviewed it yet.
That's true.
This one says option 1 on it.
Besides,
No,
no
another
developer is gonna spend money on engineering and design
Right.
without even
Right.
knowing our feeling on the site. And secondly, if you approve this mixed use, it's not just for one pot in that lot. It's for
Mhm.
anywhere possibly he can put one in.
Right.
So the sketch may be helpful, but it certainly doesn't affect what we do. We're either giving a mixed use on the whole site or we're not.
That's
it.
right.
Right. Yep, exactly.
Exactly. Okay. Any other questions, Eric?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll hear, we got, anybody in the audience there wanna? Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're muted.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm Sue Peristeer and I'm on the board at the Village at River's Edge.
Oh,
The
thank
meeting
you.
was held to see Tom DePlacido. It wasn't a meeting for other board purposes.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow.
just him as a draw brought in over 75 people. I
Wow.
believe the plan was drawn up just preliminary to having our meeting. So it's a very preliminary plan. He seemed to answer everybody's concerns about light and noise and parking and access. And I would say the favorability when he finished after about an hour of answering questions and showing what his vision was, I'd say hand raising was probably 95% for it. And that was without coffee or donuts. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah. He's a good draw, and he's built a wonderful community that's here right now. And I think we all feel that it would be good to have all of those commercial spaces rented, and perhaps the demographics need to be explored a little bit more as to what goes into those places, like hearing aid specialists and vision doctors and things that meet the demographics of the area. But I think that we're pretty much for it here.
Excellent. I appreciate you giving us that feedback. That's excellent feedback. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that said, is there any more discussion, motion? What's your thought, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I don't have any more discussion. Does anybody else want to talk about it? Then I see none or hearing none. I think we should make a motion to put it back on the floor. I mean, that would be my recommendation. I want to see what the other board would kind of gauge the interest here. I'd put it back on the floor as written, no changes. I mean, I still like the language. I think it's appropriate. And it's been fully vetted by town council. So seems like I see a few heads shaking.
So the motion would be to submit to the town warrant the bylaw changes to allow mixed use for the C4 district. Is that sufficient?
Maybe a friendly,
as written in the document that we previously reviewed. What was the name of the document? Or
Article 12. So maybe something along the lines to help you out a little bit would be a motion to submit a substitute motion on Article 12 to place before town
Motion-
meeting. Something like
motion
that.
to submit a substitute motion to submit Article 12 to the town warrant for the upcoming town meeting as reviewed by the planning board previously.
Jay Talaman will tell you exactly how to do that, Rich.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I was just thinking something for tonight. Just
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll have something written up that's correct and brief for the town meeting. We did it at the last town meeting, so I have the language. I just don't, I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. But so we do have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Chris Montfort,
Aye.
John Weddleton,
aye,
Eric Diamond,
Aye.
and Chad Peck, the chair votes aye. So you have four of us that are on the call. So it's unanimous of those on the call, Rich, to bring that back onto the floor.
You in honor of Mr. Former Chairman Byron, you want to ask Melissa what her opinion is?
Yes, and I would and yes, I love that Walter used to do that. Yes, and can I get the opinion of our associate Melissa?
This is usually an easy one for me, but it isn't for this one because David, our liaison, isn't here, so I don't know what his concerns were. So in this case, I honestly don't know because I wasn't in the meeting and he's not here to explain.
That's totally understandable. I respect that. Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go.
Okay.
Duly noted.
Yep. So Rich, I guess you and I will work on that language to put it back onto the floor. And I don't really think we need any particular handouts or anything for this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If somebody has a question, it's the C4.
Well, I'm working on a handout for the board to review, just for in general for the two zoning articles anyway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but nothing different than what you're already working on.
No, correct, right. Yep.
That's fine. Oh, I see Gary's joining us just in time to close.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, Gary. How are you?
Hey, Gary.
Can Gary make the motion to close the meeting?
So hold on. Do we?
Is it over?
No, almost. Do we have any other unanticipated business? I see none.
No.
No unanticipated, but I'm always a big fan of a handout, even if it's just showing people what the C4 is. Because until a few months ago, I probably couldn't have told you what that was until I printed out the Norfolk
Yes.
zoning map.
Yeah, that's what's going to be included in the handout is a map of the area.
Yep. I agree with you, Melissa. The C4, I was under the impression it was just River's Edge, and it's actually a little bit bigger than that. And there's another community. So I agree with you. And Rich is going to provide that as a handout. So
Perfect.
okay. So no other new business. So Gary, if you want to make the motion to close out the meeting. I think Gary's muted.
Gary has already left us.
Gary has left the building. All right. Anyone else want to make the motion to close?
Motion to end the meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second,
We'll do a roll call vote. Chris Montfort,
Aye.
John Waddleton,
aye.
Eric Diamond,
Aye.
and Gary Sullivan. He's there. I don't think he's
I don't
there. And chair votes aye. And Melissa, your opinion?
I vote aye as well.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. We are
Have a good
adjourned.
night.
Cheers. Bye.